condensed and simplified. So I'm going to go through and just spill out all the science, but then if someone says, hey, now in English, please just raise your hand. My point is not to impress you with a bunch of big words. Now, yes, holidays are coming up, and if you can go up and spill some, conjugation and glutathione, dysbiosis, and impress your friends, by all means. That's a great time to do it, okay? But the point is, again, to help you understand where the majority of illnesses stem from. And that's what I'm going to go through here. Okay, so first you have to understand that the gastrointestinal system, from the mouth to the exit, is very specific. So in each section, every pH and every organism and every enzyme is very specific. So from the stomach, which can dissolve nails, because it's stomach acid of 2, through different parts of the intestinal tract is a whole different and very specific pH, enzyme, and group of microorganisms. And, this is, again, one of those trivia things. Did you know that the organisms that you have living with you and in you and for you totals over 100 trillion? The cells in your body are only 10 trillion. So did you get that? There are more of them in you than you.
We are not ourselves.
That's kind of mind expanding, isn't it, when you think about that? So be nice to them, because when they turn on you, it's not nice, right? So, the whole process of digestion then is mastication, assimilation, absorption. It's all about breaking down the bits and pieces to absorb, so then it's remade into you, okay? So, and the primary, you're talking about protein, sugars, and fats. Okay. Now, the problems occur, and we're going to take protein, because that's the primary, that as it's breaking down, dissolving in the stomach, it should be, a protein should go from a protein to a peptone to an amino acid. So the enzymes break down each of the particles into the amino acids, and your body knows what to do with an amino acid when it absorbs. So this absorption all takes place. We're going to take a little cut right here out of the small intestine, and we're going to blow it up. And what you've got in your small intestine is shag carpet. Did you know that? Okay, it's a brush border. And here's a good way to illustrate it. All right, they're called villi and microvilli. And you stretch all these out. If these were laid and just pulled out, it would be 3 football fields. There's a lot of microvilli in there. Okay, so these are extremely important to your survival. The little microorganisms, they're kind of like those fish that clean off the sharks. You know how they hang around and clean up? That's what they do to your microvilli. So they keep those all nice and clean and healthy, and the enzymes are breaking everything down so that the particles are absorbed. So you take this amino acid, now they're just little particles, they make it absorbed, and there's your lumen, which is where the big blood vessel is. It absorbs into your blood, and then it goes out into your circulation, and the amino acids are then taken and remanufactured into muscles and hormones and more enzymes. And that's the way it should work. Okay, but here's what happens when there's problems. When there's problems in this brush border, and the problem happens when there's a break, a fissure. Okay? So now, if your digestion is not working properly, and you've got a break in your villi, in your brush border, what happens is these amino acids are still a peptone. And the peptone takes a shortcut and gets absorbed into circulation. And remember, your body knows what an amino acid looks like, but it doesn't recognize the peptone. So when your body sees a foreign invader, what does it do? What's that? What? Attack. And what's our attack? What's our armory of our body?
Immune system.
There you go. And what are the bullets? Right, that make antibodies. All right. So these little antibodies, they're like, oh, they go up to an amino acid and they check it out and say, oh, I know you. You're a self. And then it goes up and it checks this out and says, ooh, what are you? Okay, so then it gives out little messages and it calls in the heavy artillery. And that has memory. Your immune system is a central processing computer full of memory. And now it has been given this information that this is bad. But what happens is that this peptide happens to look like the peptide that's in your thyroid. Or another peptide comes through and it's attacked and it happens to look like the sheath around your brain. So when it attacks your thyroid, it's called thyroiditis. When it attacks the sheath around your brain, it's called multiple sclerosis. When it attacks your joints, it's called rheumatoid arthritis. Autoimmune. Do you see where the root of this autoimmune, all autoimmune diseases come from? From the health of your gut. It's your own immune system that was put memory on food particles that got into your circulation and is now turning on your own body. Okay? So what other things cause these fissures and these problems in the gut? Can anybody name some?
Sugar. Ibuprofen.
Yep. Sugar. Yep. There's a good one. Ibuprofen, which is a.
NSAID.
There you go.
Toxins,
Yep. What kind of toxins?
heavy metals.
Well, more toxins.
Like pesticides.
Pesticides.
Chemicals.
Herbicide, pesticide.
Chemicals of all kinds.
Yeah. Chemicals. Yep. Okay. Right. Also, anything that in the environment, if the pH is off, if the enzymes aren't there, if the microorganisms aren't doing their job, holes in the brush border. Okay. What about endogenous chemicals, things that our body produces that cause holes? Does anyone know what cortisol is?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Stress. How many people do you know get an ulcer because they're stressed out? Okay, their stomach hurts because they're stressed. Okay.
Yeah.
You know why? You know, everyone's saying they're so safe. Okay, there's two different kinds. Those that produce, you know, they're engineered plants that produce their own pesticides. So you eat those plants and bam, you got pesticide, right? And you know, then you got the others that are chelators. Okay, so when they go in and chelate all your micronutrients out, holes in the brush border. Okay. Anything else? Go on the cheat sheet. See if we listed. I've given you all the answers here, by the way. Just in case. Okay, yeah, all the organisms. Yeast. Parasites.
Yeah, parasites.
Right? All of those. Did I miss any? Oh, lectins. Does anyone know what a lectin is?
Stuff around nuts.
Beans? So, nuts, seeds, well, nuts are seeds, right? Beans are seeds. Okay, so they're all seeds, and nature protects seeds. You know, if it didn't, then the pests and the organisms would eat them. But they have a natural immune system. They're called lectins, and they discourage these pests and insects and rodents from eating them. And they also cause issues in our gut too. So the best thing to eliminate those, that's why you have to soak beans. To soak them to get off the lectins, or what? They give you gas because it upsets your internal flora. Alright, so if you let them sprout, then it germinates. It's no longer a seed, it's a vegetable. And so the molecular consistency changes. Then it doesn't hurt your stomach. So these sprouted wheat breads, they let it sprout, dry, grind it up, make flour, then it's the bread. If they take it straight from the seed, grind it up, all the lectins are with them. So that's where you get these gut problems. So that's some of the components, in our food that will cause some digestive upset. Okay. Let's see, we got them all. Oh, yes. The top allergy issues. Milk, wheat, which gliadin, again. Gliadin is, right now, because we're hybridizing to put more lectins in our wheat, because it increases the protein content, we're also making it indigestible.
Wow.
Okay? So, number one reason right now in small children for leaky gut, wheat, the gliadin. Soy, egg. Okay, so those are your top food allergens. And if what makes the difference between those that can handle the allergens and those that can't, protection. And so your front line, and keeping the acid where it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have acid in your stomach. If you're refluxing acid, this whole system is out of balance. And then if you take a proton pump inhibitor, then you have acid when you shouldn't, or and then you don't have it when you should. And worst of all, when you've neutralized your stomach, now you're allowing the front line of defense that was designed to kill the yeast, parasites, and the bad pathogenic bacteria, now it's getting through. So you've now lowered your immune system. Okay. So we're seeing our guts are under assault from all different directions. This is why that's the root of inflammation. Sorry.
Roll your
Okay. SIBO is just when this gets out of control, the small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So when you hear a doc say SIBO, that's what's going on. Okay. And alcohol. Again, another big component in the food side or beverage that causes leaky gut. All right. So, now let's go into what's supposed to protect us from all those toxins. Because your body has backup and backups for its backup. And this is really the good news. And that's something I want to tell, because I've done lectures, and all of a sudden everyone's face starts to drop. And I had one raise her hand, she says, "Does this mean we're all going to die?" And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to give you that impression. I forgot to start out with the good news. There is a gospel of nutrition. Your bodies want to be well. They are self-healing, and they are miraculous. If you stop poisoning them, they will do their job. So that's, my main message, is that there is good news. Once you know this is going on, you can stop, poisoning the system. Because it is a self-healing system. It is a wonderful thing. You should thank your liver You know, have you, thank this body, for doing such, wonderful things. And as we go on, you'll see, some more of these detoxification pathways that are going on automatically. And thank goodness, we forget to remind ourselves to do all this stuff. Okay. So now what's supposed to deal with all these toxins is this wonderful organ called the liver. I am a big liver fan. This guy does 400 different conjugations, different type of chemical reactions to protect us all the time. So it's divided into two main phases. Phase 1 detoxification and phase 2. Now you're hearing a lot more about this phase 1. This is your cytochrome P450 detoxification. And you'll hear them talking about doing cytochrome P450 genetic testing to find out what drugs are interacting. This is the big thing going on because people are taking so many pharmaceuticals. The average person over 50 is on 5 pharmaceuticals. Okay? My grandmother at 100 went into her doctor and he was like, "Oh, Mrs. Carmack, you're only on a diuretic. You should be on da-da-da-da." She's like, "Do you think I want to live longer?" But her whole point too, is that just because she's that age doesn't automatically mean you're supposed to be on this many pharmaceuticals. So, okay. So what is important about this is that you've got all of these enzymes in your liver that are detoxifying all different components, including herbs. And this is why if you're on pharmaceuticals and then you're going to take herbs, you've got to look at them like drugs too, because many of them do influence the phase 1 detoxification. So, here's an example. In this particular enzyme, which is called the CYP1A2, this is what detoxifies caffeine. And the inducer, which means it makes that enzyme work a little faster, is cigarettes. So that's why you see people that smoke cigarettes can consume a lot of coffee. It's being metabolized so quickly in their body they don't feel the effects. So they can drink it all day long. Doesn't mean it's not hurting them, but they don't feel the effects. Okay, so that's the reason. It's a biochemical reason that happens. Okay, another enzyme here, CYP3A, is what detoxifies Paxil, Xanax, estrogens, and tamoxifen. Now, if you know about breast cancer, many times a woman will be put on tamoxifen so that she doesn't make estrogen. Okay, so the pathway that detoxifies estrogen is the same one that detoxifies tamoxifen. So the inducer of that enzyme, one of them is St. John's wort. And that's why you never ever give a woman St. John's wort if she's on breast cancer therapy, tamoxifen, because same thing the cigarettes did. It metabolizes the tamoxifen so fast, it doesn't have the anti-estrogen effect. So it won't work for her. Okay. The inhibitor of that enzyme is grapefruit juice. And you've all heard not to drink grapefruit juice if you're on pharmaceuticals. And that's why. It slows down that enzyme so it doesn't have an effect, or you don't have to take as much. Now, my scientist brain says, well, if it slows it down, you don't have to take as many of the drugs, then you could take half the amount of drugs, drink grapefruit juice, the pharmaceutical, then you won't buy as many pharmaceuticals, so don't do that. Right? So that's a bad thing. That's why don't drink grapefruit juice, according, to that. But again, you have to be very careful, because many of these pharmaceuticals will be inducers for some enzymes and inhibitors for others. So now you have to, if you're on several pharmaceuticals, you have to research each one to make sure you're not causing a problem. And one of the biggest problems, for instance, you take this enzyme, CYP2E1, which detoxifies acetaminophen, or Tylenol. The inducer of that is alcohol, or fasting. The inhibitor of that is garlic or licorice. Okay, so why you don't why you don't drink alcohol and take Tylenol is because it's going to metabolize that acetaminophen so fast, and that's a big problem. Because now we're going to segue right into phase 2. What phase 1 does when it detoxifies these, the detoxification the intermediary metabolite could be more dangerous than the original one. You have substrate, enzyme break it down to an intermediate. That intermediate could be more toxic. It's being staged for phase 2. If you don't have enough phase 2, you've now created a worse toxin, and it has nowhere to go but recycle and cause tissue damage, and this is one of the primary areas it's going to damage. So if you don't have enough phase 2 liver detoxification, you're going to have more leaky gut. See this vicious cycle building? It's a snowball of disease. So, as an example, the metabolite that phase 1 breaks acetaminophen down to is, N-acetyl-O-benzoquinonamine, which is just abbreviated NAPQ, which is very toxic. But your phase 2, here's glutathione. Glutathione is the, the most potent antioxidant your body produces. This is what protects, not only detoxifies these very dangerous metabolites, but protects every tissue and organ of your body. So it's number 1. And so what it does is it neutralizes that NAPQ into mercuric acid. Okay, so now it's harmless, everything's fine. What happens if you run out of glutathione? Very dangerous. You have no way then to neutralize this NAPQ, and so it's being metabolized in the liver, so the first thing is liver failure, and then cell death. Tylenol is the number 1 reason for liver failure in the world. It kills more people than hepatitis and alcohol together. Okay? So, if you don't have any glutathione, and you take Tylenol, and you drink alcohol, you are at extreme risk for liver failure. So what's the treatment? Someone comes in with liver failure due to overdose of acetaminophen. They give them N-acetylcysteine, NAC, which helps the body make glutathione. That's the treatment. And it's because of this chemical, the biochemistry here. So, but these kind of reactions are going on in your body all the time. So now at phase 2, you see how important these are. These break it down to the first step. These are the ones that remove it from the body. So glutathione is one. Amino acids, another. Amino acids are, for many of these toxins, a conjugate to remove it from the body. That's why I never recommend someone do a 40-day fast if they're very toxic, because they're going to start pumping these toxins out of their body, and no amino acids, no protein, no food. There's no place for them to go but keep recycling and keep punching more holes in the gut. Okay. So another pathway, sulfation, glucuronidation, acetylation, and methylation. So again, thank your liver for doing all these things automatically for you all the time. Now, as an example of how important these are, and by the way, again, all the genetic tests that people are talking about, SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, Ancestry.com, get your 23andMe, it's the big buzzword in all, conventional and functional medicine. What is it doing? It's testing these enzymes. This is what they're testing. If you don't have these pathways, you are more susceptible to Alzheimer's, heart attack, cancer, and they get it all from this information right here. So, as an example, methylation. Right. We know that children, if you do a single nucleotide polymorphism on methylation, that those, now homozygous means the same. Heterozygous means different. So if you have a homozygous single nucleotide mutation. That means you have a mutation from your mom and a mutation from your dad, and it's homozygous. If you're homozygous for your methylation to do this, you have the highest chance of getting autism. If you're heterozygous when you're born, and you just inherited a mutation from your mom or dad, and not your dad, so you're just heterozygous, ADHD. That's why ADHD and autism are on the spectrum of methylation. That's what determines the problem. Because if you can't release the toxins from your body, as an autistic child can't, they're getting holes in their stomach, and then they can't eat wheat, and they can't eat dairy, and they can't eat all these things, and they have tissue failure and brain function problems. And it's because of that genetic mutation. But those mutations can happen anywhere along the line and still cause a problem. That's why if you do the 23andMe, and keep in mind, when I started doing these genetic tests, each one of these was $100 to check. So somewhere around $600 or $700, you could get your genome mapped, and I could tell you what you were at risk for, and we could, do the mom and dad and guess at, a newborn and see kind of what issues. But now you can do all of these, and it's not cost effective to go to a practitioner. You go online to Ancestry.com, and they do them all for $99. So what a deal. So I would do it through that. It's called 23andMe on that website. Bring it to a practitioner that can interpret it for you and pay them their practitioner fee, and you're going to come out way ahead. But it's a great idea. It's available, and it's very cost effective now. So that's the genetic test story. Okay. All right, so now what can we do about these? Fortunately, there are nutrients that can support each of these pathways. So we'll go write down some of these. And by the way, all of these charts and everything, once Dave, you clicked on the links for the newsletter. Did they open up okay for these charts? Super. So I'll just send you the newsletter. It has all of the charts that will list all of the components for each of these phase 1 and phase 2. So don't worry about memorizing it. There's not going to be a test. Not until Tuesday. So yeah. Green tea.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the most powerful natural substances to replenish your phase 1 detoxification. Ellagic acid, watercress, green tea, silymarin. So any kind of purification, cleansing, detox, you have to make sure these or something equivalent to these are included. Because again, you want all of this happening correctly.
That's for phase 1.
Phase 1, yes. And in phase 2, you can take straight glutathione. You can take straight glutathione. You can take S-acetylglutathione. You can take the things that make glutathione, like we mentioned before, N-acetylcysteine, which is NAC. Ellagic acid also helps with glutathione, watercress, and silymarin. So these are not only phase 1, but they also help in the glutathione. And again, glutathione is the master detoxifier. It is extremely important for the prevention of Alzheimer's, but your body should make it. And if it doesn't make it well, you need to support it. Okay, for amino acids, you have to take straight amino acids, or a good protein blend so you can break it down into amino acids. And there's a lot of different proteins. The most popular right now is a rice pea blend, but most companies, I just try to avoid soy, try to avoid just straight egg white protein. Try to avoid straight anything. A combination is a better option because there's some issues with manufacturers. You have to check to make sure it's not a Chinese, which has a lot of arsenic, which they were finding in the rice protein. The soy can have issues because most of it's GMO, unless it's fermented.